Follow Me Live. I'm Lori Denning, and I'm your host tonight as we start our podcast over Come Follow Me. So I thought we could just do two things today. First, I wanted to introduce myself and tell you who I am and how I got invited to do this. And then second, I thought maybe we could review a little bit of Come Follow Me for the book of Revelation, since that's coming up and is awesome, and everyone's going to want to do that. Thanks, Paul. But we're ready to move on a little, right? So first, my name's Lori. I am a long-time gospel doctrine teacher. I think I've taught in my ward for about 20 years. And then I've also taught institute and seminary over the years, but I'm just like you, actually, just an average member who has taught for a long time and then found out that I really loved it. And so, as you can see, I have a lot of books and I have a lot of things that I've studied over the years. Additionally, I decided last year that I liked the gospel so much that even as an adult, I was going to go back to school. So I went back to university and I'm studying theology. And BYU doesn't have a program in that. They do ancient Near Eastern studies. So I am attending a different university, which is actually not affiliated with church. And so that's been really awesome. And then I'll be moving on next semester as well to another university, continue even and further in my studies. So I've learned to love it. And I thought that maybe I could share that with you if you're like me. And so what I started doing is recording my lessons. I actually teach in two wards. I teach in an old folks home and in my regular ward. And so I was recording those lessons for a while for those who couldn't attend. And someone said, why don't you just do a podcast? And I said, oh, you mean like shorter and more interesting? So I did. So I have started the 20-minute scriptorian. So twice a week, I try to do about a 20-minute lesson on Come Follow Me, just for people like you and me. And here's my take on it. There are probably people that are way over here that are like super inspirational. And when you listen to their lessons, you're like, I want to change my life. And those are the best object lessons ever. I'm probably not over there. And then there are kind of some over here that are super academic and you feel like you need to have a degree in Hebrew or something to understand them. Probably not there either. I'm probably somewhere in the middle where you say, I want a little bit more, but I don't want to be just inspirational and I want to be lost in the academics. So that's what I try to do, is kind of share what I'm learning. So that's it. 20-minute scriptorian twice a week. Join me pretty much wherever you can get a podcast. All right, so let's move on for a second. What I thought we could do is actually talk about the book of Revelation, and probably because it's so interesting and fun, and it's super interesting as far as how all the speculation gets started on what it means. But it might be a little bit challenging in Come Follow Me. What are you going to do with your family? How are you going to break this up for your ward? And it's always around Christmas time, and who wants to talk about beasts and things like that at Christmas? But it's worth studying. It's fun. So here's what I thought we could do, is kind of go over that and see some things. First, the book of Revelation is what we call an apocalyptic genre of literature. So genre is really just a type of book. So if you think about your bookshelf and you say, I've got cookbooks in there and I've got how-to books and I've got science fiction and fantasy, those are all different genres, and you would expect them to act differently and teach you different things. For example, if you started a story and it was a space battle with laser swords, you'd say, hey, that's science fiction. And I kind of expect how that's going to work out. And that's what apocalyptic literature is. It's a type of literature, and it was really popular about the time of the Second Temple period through the Christian period, which is about the time that the Jews return to Jerusalem after the Babylonian captivity, when they make a temple again. So that time of Ezra and Nehemiah and those guys in there. And so it was really popular, not just in the Bible, but in writings around the time. And so people kind of knew the genre and knew what to expect. But it's not very popular for us, so it's going to feel weird and you're not going to really expect. I mean, think about jumping into a science fiction book. If you'd never read science fiction before, it'd be super weird. So that's the first thing to know about apocalyptic literature. Now, what does that word mean? It's just a big Greek word for a reveal or an unveiling. So that's where you get the book of Revelation. It's not Revelations, it's Revelation. So there's no S in that word, but it's just an unveiling. It's just a peek behind the curtain to see what's going to happen. It also tends to deal with not historical time. So it's going to deal with some future time, way outside of historical time. And here's the reason why. One of the main reasons it was written to provide comfort in times of persecution, to say, hey, I thought life was going to be fair and I thought God was going to be just. And maybe it wasn't so just for you if you were being persecuted, or maybe if you were an ancient Jew, the temple had been destroyed and your people had been sacked and removed. And maybe if you were a first century Christian, they were being burned and thrown to the lions. And you're like, hey, I thought this was going to work out better. And so this literature is going to say, hey, there's comfort and there's love on the other side, and justice will prevail in the future. So those are kind of what it means. And the first thing to remember is that tone. A couple other things that you'll see that kind of predominate in the style are, let's say I wrote some down. First, you're going to see usually a messenger that's going to arrive, usually angelic messenger or some kind of someone that's going to show up and help with this unveiling or this reveal or this vision of the future. And a lot of times the recipient, the person that's revealing it, doesn't have a name, in fact, and a lot of them, they're just revealing to this messenger's revealing and helping understand. So there's usually an angel or messenger that's going to help interpret the events that are going to come up. One of the reasons you need that is because it's going to be really symbolic. Now, we use symbolic language a ton in the scriptures, but if you don't really understand the symbols, that's where it gets a little wonky. And that's where you're going to see stuff like 666 and these, the woman with the thing on her head and the beast with horns. And you're like, I have no idea what that means. So the angelic visitor a lot of times would explain what the code was or what the symbols were. But what are you going to do with that? I mean, what if it never tells you what the 7 stars and the beast that came out of the ocean is about? Well, we have a cheat sheet. There are some people that have done some work on what it typically meant, and I'm going to share one. It'll show up backwards probably. But if you don't know Alonzo Gaskell's work, he's a professor at BYU, an awesome professor, and he teaches has a book on the lost language of symbolism. And he talks a lot about the different symbols, what they thought they meant anciently. And it's a great cheat sheet, not just for apocalyptic literature anyway. In fact, if you haven't read it, stop what you're doing and go get this book today. Lost Language of Symbolism by Gaskell. Thanks, Dr. Gaskell. So that's going to be one of the things that are going to help us. Hey, these are really symbolic things. And so you got to kind of get it. Now, for the people that this was revealed to, they would have known what these things were. They would have kind of understood the symbology that was being used. So it wouldn't have been that foreign to them. But for us, it's like, I don't really know what 666 means or an animal with a horn on its head. So just know that that's part of it. Some of the other things, it tends to be kind of a chronology is going to be revealed. Again, the angelic messenger is probably going to have to explain it, but it might be past, present, and future, or some kind of symbols that are going to show this pacing of time. So it could be the trumpets are opening, or it could be the different horses that come along or something. And it's going to, again, remember, they're looking to a future time when things are going to be set right. And that's what's called an eschatology. So you'll sometimes see this, the end of days is an eschatology or an eschaton, another big word, but really just means end of time. The ancient prophets used to call that the day of the Lord. And that day of the Lord then got a little prefix on it, the great and dreadful day of the Lord. Great for some, dreadful for others. But that day of the Lord, that eschaton, that future was coming. And so this angelic messenger is going to kind of pace it out for us and try to show that it's coming in the future. Also signs of the end. So it's going to say, hey, the signs are coming. And we've had those lessons since forever, whether it's Matthew 24 or here, the signs of the end. And don't get too caught up. The purpose of these, again, is to give comfort. It's not going to be like tick it off and say, oh, it's almost here. You've missed the point, if that's what you think those verses are about. But it is going to try to say, hey, the end is near. Also, tends to be dualistic, meaning it's good and bad, light and dark, sheep and goats, and also that God will eventually be enthroned and all this righteousness and all the injustice that's been set will be set to right, so that this dualistic, the good and the bad, are going to finally get what's coming to them. So while it wasn't in today that those, the evil guys won, in the future, they're going to get what's coming to them. Additionally, it tends to be that the righteous are a pretty small group and the wicked are a pretty bad group. And no worries if you've died, because there's going to be a final judgment and resurrection, and everyone will get the right thing for them. So it's really justice is going to be restored in this end times. That's pretty much it. I think those are pretty good overviews of a view of apocalyptic literature. There's a lot to be said on it, and it's super fun to study, and it's worth your time. But please continue reading Come Follow Me, use the lesson manual, use some of the tools that are out there, and join me on the 20-minute Scriptorian. Thanks again. See you soon.